visit to a house of prostitution, that he may preserve his wife from the chance of pregnancy, and the immorality by which that wife brings herself willfully to destroy the living fruit of her womb.
The letter was pivotal to what historians call the physician's crusade against abortion. And Storer was making a few key arguments for why abortion should be illegal across the country. First, he introduced a new idea.
The child is alive from the moment of conception.
That life began at conception. Remember, up till now, people generally agreed that life began when a woman could actually feel life move inside her, at quickening. But that wasn't enough for Storer. He campaigned on a moral argument that also tapped into the racial fears of the moment. Fears that would eventually inspire a pseudoscientific field of, quote, racial improvement and planned breeding of the population.
Which is where the Nazis...
These racial fears would inspire forced sterilization programs to decrease certain populations, whereas Storer's anti-abortion campaign was trying to increase other populations by focusing on
Protestant white women.
Because elite Protestant white women were often the ones going to abortion providers such as Madame Restell, and people like Horatio Storer were realizing that that had consequences.
The birth rate for Protestant white women had been declining over the course of the 19th century. So he had fears of what was commonly referred to as race suicide, that the Anglo stock wasn't going to replenish itself fast enough.
Just happens to be the same fears these Trump terrorists have to shoot a bunch of people.
And populate this country and populate
Not
the
a
Great
coincidence.
Plains and the Great West.
This is Leslie Vegan, author of When Abortion Was a Crime.
These guys have been
Women,
doing it
Medicine,
since
and Law in the United States.
1880s.
Well, it is going to be Chinese migrants. It's going to be African Americans, newly freed people, and Catholics. They're not the ones using abortion. It's our.
Or the KKK is so against Catholics.
Who are using abortion, trying to get into medical
As
school,
well as,
trying
of
to
course,
do
against
politics, and they should be at
minorities.
home having babies and taking care of them.
They began to say we need white women to use their loins because they're concerned about the blackening and the browning of what is now, what at that point became the United States. And this real concern that when black people become free, what will this mean for white people?
Michelle Goodwin, author of Policing the Womb, Invisible Women and the Criminalization of Motherhood.
And white women become a key to that.
Because elite Protestant white women were often the ones going to abortion providers such as Madame Restell, and people like Horatio Storer were realizing that that had consequences.
And so if the AMA could wrest control over the marketplace of abortion, it would be lucrative to this growing cadre of university-educated, mostly male physicians who are beginning to specialize in things like obstetrics and gynecology.
So midwives were slandered in this campaign.
Described as unsanitary, unclean, as unmoral.
The people
And
who were
as
delivering
clueless as the
everybody.
mothers themselves.
Saying
For
women do not
centuries.
know. They don't know when they quicken, and really makes fun of women's own sensations and knowledges and says, some of them quicken at 1 month, some of them never quicken at all, then they have a baby.
They may very constantly be recognized by the physician in cases where no sensation is felt by the mother.
So there's this scoffing at women's knowledge, saying this is a sin, this is murder,
Same
you're
story
killing
again.
children.
We don't need the AMA.
By the moral law, the willful killing of a human being at any stage of its existence.
The AMA is the same organization that keeps us from having
And the general
universal
public,
health care,
and women
which
don't
is
get it,
murder.
They don't know that, and we need to change the laws.
Not having health
So to
care for
help
everybody
people
is
get in,
murder.
Storer wrote
And the AMA is who's
articles,
kept us from
books,
having it.
reports, speeches, all to make his views on abortion and women clear.
He was really hostile to women.
And that hostility was starting to gain traction. A few years into the campaign, some states began to pass laws outlawing or restricting abortion. Perhaps the harshest was in Connecticut in 1860. The law got rid of the quickening rule and made abortion a crime for which the abortionist and the woman getting the abortion could be fined and jailed. And over the next few decades, most states across the country would adopt similar laws, thanks in part to another campaign that was going on at the same time. that was getting even more attention. It was led by a Union Army Civil War veteran named
Anthony Comstock, who's well known for leading the anti-birth control crusade of the 19th century.
Anthony Comstock was a descendant of some of the earliest Puritans in New England. He took that ancestry to heart and went on to work with the Young Men's Christian Association, the YMCA, in New York City, and founded the New York Society for the Suppression of Vice. And he dedicated his life to exactly that, suppressing vice.
In 1873, Comstock began lobbying Congress to pass anti-obscenity laws. There had been a rise of prostitution and new forms of birth control
parental
like
advisory.
diaphragms and rubber condoms, all of which triggered a powerful backlash, a backlash that culminated in the Comstock Law.
The criminalization of sending materials through the mail that could be seen as obscene.
The law made it illegal to mail sex toys, pornography, contraception, abortion drugs, or even information about contraception and abortion.
Including some medical books that had pictures of anatomy, right? It's just how deep it went.
I wonder if that's
But
the first
here's
time we
the
were
thing.
losing free speech
Comstock
like that, or
conflated birth control with abortion.
just one of the
We
worst?
saw no difference between the two, which meant that abortion was wrapped up into this new law, making it a federal offense to send or order material about abortion by mail.